Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. First order of business, I want to say I am sorry because I did take some time off from posting and I didn't let you know. Usually when I'm taking time off, it's because I'm doing a lot of research for these videos. In this case, I'm a half a century old, and with the pandemic going on, I had some doctor's appointments that I had put off, and then there were some scares. I'm fine, but that led me not to post, because sometimes if I'm not feeling good or feeling like myself, I don't post. I don't want to bring my problems to you, so that's why. And I'm just going to commit that if I'm going to ever need to shut the channel down, or if I'm having something that's going to come up with it, I'm not posting consistently, I'll let you know. Okay? Deal? So today, let's talk about the HBO Max series called Q Into the Storm. I really liked this documentary. I recommend it. 2 thumbs up, guys. It's great. It's a great documentary. It's thought-provoking. It's interesting. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. And it's got a really awesome intro. Like, you don't necessarily want to skip it through all the different 6 episodes. It's fascinating. And so, caveat, let me give my caveat that I always give. This video is my opinion, and it's formed by the information that's provided, that's presented in this documentary by the parties, also information that's released on social media, and the court of public opinion, you know, what we all gossip about and stuff. So the viewers are always encouraged to do their own research. I'm not being like you. Do your own dang research, you know, in order to best form your own opinion. So the opinions are going to be open in my comment section. I just ask that you keep it classy, keep it fact-based or, you know, opinion-based, and don't fight with each other, because that's not what I'm about. I'm about ideas, and, you know, of course you can have your opinion, but we don't want to attack each other for our ideas. So without further ado, full spoiler alert. Yeah, I'm going to spoil this for you. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want it to be spoiled, this is the time to shut off. Otherwise, let's get into it. So Q Into the Storm is by Cullen Hoback, and it's a 6-episode documentary wherein the saga of QAnon, or Q, that's the anonymous pseudonym of the person or the group that is posting. This whole thing is explored and it's revealed in this documentary. The theory is, if you don't know anything about QAnon or Q, the theory is that one of Trump's people who had a high-level security clearance, a Q-level clearance, and if you know anything about, or do anybody that has a security clearance, a high-level security clearance, a Q-level clearance is a very high-level security clearance. It's actually, I don't believe it is the highest level, but we're not even going to go there. Allegedly, this Q entity was dropping hints anonymously online. And the drops were later termed Q drops. And they allegedly predicted happenings using the Socratic method and inviting the reader to search on their own to try to figure it out. So it was very, in my mind, like Nostradamus meets the Socratic method meets Choose Your Own Adventure. If you're from the 70s, you'll know what I'm talking about. Meets like ciphers. It was an interesting concept. I want to give you just a tiny bit of background into where I come into this, like what I might have known or been familiar with about this before coming into this documentary. I've never met a conspiracy theory I wasn't interested in just sticking my nose into for 5 seconds. So I was raised on them. I think like I was weaned on conspiracy theories, not by my mother, but I was. And so I'm not saying I buy into them. I find them fascinating. Sometimes the issues are fascinating, like, you know, who shot JFK? You know, that's something to look into. And sometimes I think that the psychology of the conspiracy theory is fascinating. So I'm into it. And I knew about QAnon about the time that Alex Jones got into QAnon, all right? Or was starting to talk about QAnon. So, yes, and when he was still platformed. So it was on my radar, and I remember being in Germany or in Austria. I don't remember. Was I in Vienna? Yeah, I was in Vienna whenever the thing happened at the pizza shop, the Pizzagate, when the person came in to the pizza place. And I remember being so shocked about it because I was aware of all the goings on and all the chatter. I'm going to call it chatter. I was aware of all the chatter that was going on. And I remember turning to, because we were in actually an American place, and I remember turning to another group of Americans and saying, can you believe that someone's invaded Comet Ping Pong? And they lived in that area, and so we started a conversation about that. So that's my level of awareness. I was cognizant of it. And I remember when I came back to the States, I remember that then there was battles between different entities over almost like the ownership of Q. You know, like, was this person Q, was this not? And they had on YouTube like a vested interest and who Q was. So, and then I'm going to let you know how I felt about it initially. I felt it was either A, a psyop, or B, a LARP. Like, I just smelled it. I felt it was a LARP. That's just my opinion, okay? Now, does a LARP mean that it didn't have truth in it? I'm going to leave this up, but I just want to give you where my background, my bias could be coming into this, right? So let's get into the story. Shut up, Thielen, shut up. Let's get into the story. So, the original forum that this mysterious Q entity posted the information was on Reddit. And they then eventually banned QAnon discussion on that platform. And then moved to another, the entity moved his discussion to another board, 4chan. All right, and people call this all the dark web. So 4chan, as just an anonymous user, okay, anonymous. But 4chan, this entity here, tended to loosely moderate their boards for activism. So if anything started sniffing of activism, they would shut it down. So then Q allegedly then moved to 8chan, owned by Frederick Brennan. All right, another character. God, we're going to get into the characters. I love characters. I really do. So Frederick Brennan owned at that time 8chan, and that there were different boards under, on the platform. One was called Calm Before the Storm, and that is where Q kind of started posting again. And so Q went from forum to forum to forum after being essentially banned, and lands in 8chan. Okay, that's like a backstory of the progression. But we're going to get into it because there's a lot of players in this. So the documentary asks the viewer, essentially, when is free speech too much? Like, when should we curtail free speech? And it shows the end result of the free speech, like, say, going out onto the dark web, of this. The result of the saga ends with the storming of the U.S. Capitol. You know what I mean? A mere 3 years later. I've got to diverge here. I went to law school for a little while. I'm a big proponent of free speech. You don't protect free speech only when you agree with it. You have to protect the stuff that you don't agree with. Because when does it stop? I don't believe in thought police. And bad think goes into wrong think, goes into what you're thinking very quickly. So you have to be very careful about this stuff. Legally, we have things in place. You don't shout fire in a crowded theater. There are these legal safeguards. And I think that maybe should be the way we attack this, not just this hysteria. Okay? And also I think it'd be great to look into the reasons why we think these things, why we play these teams, why we think that there's these entities that are hiding information. Why don't we deal with that? You know what I mean? Instead of this banning of things, banning the discussion of things. I don't agree with that. Now you might say, well, Thielen, you're the type of person that allowed this sort of thing to happen. Well, no, I'm not. I just don't believe that you should not listen to what someone's saying and try to get to the idea of what they found wrong with society. If you found sex traffic, we'll call, YouTube, so we'll call it essay. If you found essay to be wrong, I think that's something we could talk about. If you think the elites are using essay as compromat, essentially, I think that's something we should talk about. That's something we should address with the CIA and the FBI, correct? I mean, there's ways for us to talk about this without becoming enemies. That's just my opinion. You're going to get a little, I mean, it's as told by Thea Lynn, so you're going to sometimes get a little divergence. So I'll try to keep the train on the track here. Q asks the reader in these Q drops to trust the plan, implying that there's a plan in place, to trust the plan, stay on board, and they use symbolism. Q uses symbolism and cryptic messages to spread information, an information campaign. And in my opinion, like I said before, I knew about Q back in the Alex Jones era, before he was kicked off the platforms. I'm not saying I was a huge Alex Jones fan or something. I thought he was absolute, again, character. I mean, comedic character. I thought he was hilarious. And sometimes in a way for me to see what some other people who don't agree with me, what they think, I would watch it to see, what are they thinking? Why are they thinking that? How can we come together? You know, what things do we agree on? You know, I find it fascinating. So I knew who Alex was. Absolutely. Q was very LARPy, all right? Revealing hidden truths. LARPy means live action role play. And if you know anything about gaming, or if you're from the Dungeons and Dragons era, it can be very exciting. Especially if they're like giving little drops, like little Easter eggs, and you go and try to figure it out. And where's the next one? And where does it tie together? And is it true? And it can be exciting. But it was almost like a disinformation campaign. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, most regular Americans, they don't look into conspiracy theories. Most Americans, I mean, think you're working a 9-to-5 job, you're raising your children, you're trying to get them through college, you're dealing with elderly family members, now you got a pandemic. You don't have time to screw around with conspiracy theories. You follow me? That is the last thing you are going to be thinking about until like maybe it affects you or something. But what a lot of people don't realize is that along with a dyed-in-the-wool conspiracy theory, commonly you also have a disinformation campaign, right? Because so sometimes somebody wants you, they do it on purpose. Like, it's hard to explain. But like, say for instance, you'll have something valid, like a whistleblower and something valid going on, and then someone will infiltrate that and make something really crazy come into this data, and it then negates everything that was true. And this happened, and in my opinion, and you can look on the Alphabet Agency, the CREST, website, and you can see where historically our governments, other governments do this. We spread disinformation when we feel like we should. And could this be a part of this too? Sure, it could. I mean, this could be even deeper. And I mean, in 50 years, we might find out even more. We might. You never know. Because in 50 years, that's about the time the FOIA starts getting released. People die off that were involved. 75 years, And then we'll find out a little bit more about this if our own government agencies had a part in it. Anyway, but in my opinion, like I said, most Americans, and this was more an American-driven thing, they're not into conspiracy theories. They're too busy for it, and they certainly aren't into understanding the disinformation campaign also that can go along. So the regular user is not going to get it, and so Q offers a virtual electronic Easter egg hunt for people and to find and decode these drops. So Q seemingly bolstered Trump's political campaign and assured his followers that there was a plan, and that, say, like, arrests were going to come for like the Clintons, and indictments, that there were all these federal indictments that were sealed. And by the way, there's always some federal indictments sealed. That's the way our government works. It's not always has anything to do with anything you think. It could be somebody laundering money from an insurance scam or something. So, but they were talking about military tribunals for the bad guys, etc., etc. etc. And it kind of had a little bit of something for everyone. If you were into Trump, it had a little bit of that. If you had, like, say, SA and the Epstein and all that stuff, it had a little bit of that. It had just a little bit to tie some divergent groups together. This documentary sought to unmask Q. Was Q a solo operation? Was Q one person? Did Q change identities? These are all valid questions. And note that most of the Q followers were not going to the chans. They weren't going to say, they might have gone to the Reddit, but they weren't going to 4chan, they weren't going to 8chan, they weren't going to 8kun to find the Q posts. And in the documentary, many of the characters that were interviewed slap out said they were not going to touch going into these dirty chans. The chans are message boards, and people can post memes, and they can be just essentially offensive, non-PC. Allegedly, some people try to put up child porn and things like that, and it gets taken down. But I mean, that's what we're talking. The wild, wild west of images and things to offend and things to gather about, but they're not supposed to politically gather or, stuff like that. La, 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 la. So a lot of these people that were following Q were not getting their information from the recesses of these chans. They were getting it from people that would grab it and put it on their platform or like on their YouTube. And so they were going to places that collated these Q drops, and plenty of people, like YouTubers, made mad bank, okay, analyzing these Q drops. Let's be honest. So the Q communications are ongoing, and many entities are collating the drops and having the discussions on their channels and the like. And when one is making money covering something that's ongoing, and one has incentive to also keep the Q lore going, in my opinion. On YouTube alone, okay, let me explain this to you if you don't know. You have ad revenue. I do not, okay? But you have ad revenue, all right? Those ads that are popping up, even if you watch those ads, your YouTuber's getting money for that, unless there's some other reason, which we're not going to get into, like copyright reasons, okay? Then they've got their merch, right? They've got their mugs and their t-shirts and their hats and their stickers for their car, their flags, their merch. Their merch ain't cheap, guys. Then you've got their live streaming. If they go on YouTube or another platform and they live stream and they something called super chats and super stickers. Again, I don't do this either. Money. Mad bank, as much money as a person wants to give you. All right? And I think YouTube only takes a certain portion of that money. But still, that's mad bank. It goes on and on and on. Use your imagination. So who can be the first to repost the latest Q drops, and who has the best analysis of the Q drops because they're cryptic, or at least they were at first. And some of these folks are real truthers. They're real truthers. They believe in that, okay? But also, in my opinion, a lot of these people are just chasing fame, they're chasing money, they're chasing clout, and they're riding that train, man. And that train is making them money, And you got to factor that into this. When you look at things like this, you have to look at, like, who's making money on it? Or what is another motive? Like a power. Some people like a lot of attention, But, I mean, we got to be honest. If we're going to talk about the whole Q phenomenon, we got to talk about who made the money off of it. And who, and why. So by July of 2018, Trump signals to the Q supporter in Tampa. And I think that was pretty clear that he did it. And it could be just as simple as yet another set of people that are supporting him. And he's like, yeah, he knows about it, Was he behind it? Did he have certain people in his inner circle that was like, hey, let's take a picture of your pen. Hey, let's get a picture of Air Force One. And this is da-da-da-da. It's another group of people that's behind you. Sure, maybe so. Maybe so. I don't know. I mean, I think history will bear that out. But Trump was writing the Q supporters. Was he behind Q? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I think that it's just another avenue of, gaining popularity and getting a very diverse group of people when you really think about it, behind you. So, but the QAnon followers believe the latter, They believe that he was behind Q. Again, I told you about how I first heard of Q, and I felt that it was a LARP, and then nothing changed my opinion. Dr. Jerome Corsi was on Alex Jones's program backing it all up. So there was an initial drop, and people were starting, they also had, by the way, like FBI and different people who would go on these chants and claim to have insider information. And sometimes if something bore out, then everybody be like, oh, follow this person. Well, when Q popped on the scene, it was like one of those folks. And so some people gave him, like they vouched for him, and Dr. Jerome Corsi seemingly did that on Alex Jones's program. And I asked, like, why is it important to even know who Q's identity is? It's really the information either bears out or doesn't. Well, stick with me on this one. If Q had a top secret security clearance, the information he shared would be more viable than Q was, say, a 14-year-old living in his mama's basement, right? Right. If Q is an insider, seemingly his information may be more accurate. But if Q and the information is a pure LARP with an already existing conspiracy theory, like, say, regarding the deep state, regarding the Federal Reserve, regarding the satanic Luciferian agenda, regarding false flag attacks, regarding wanting to take the Second Amendment away, the guns, the sealed indictments regarding child essay, all wrapped up into one package with a bow, like, how would you feel about that? How would you feel about that if it was a pure LARP? Because all those discussions were being had on these chans already. And all of a sudden it's like Q's got the answer and he just wants to help you to figure it out. But it's all wrapped up in a bow. Think about that. How often is everything all wrapped up with some through line through everything? What does your logic tell you there? People had divergent opinions about Q. Some thought that Steve Bannon, Trump, Flynn, that was the kind of person that Q was. Or that it was the Chan folks, like not an insider, a Chan folk, like someone from the Calm Before the Storm board, that's Paul Ferber, Fred Brennan from 8chan, Ron Watkins, Code Monkey, who then took, they later owned 8chan. He was the programmer, and Jim Watkins is the father of Ron Watkins and is a businessman. Okay, so keep in mind that. That's the second choice. Or 3, some folks believe that Q started on Reddit legitimately, moved to 4chan after he got banned, or she or it got banned off Reddit, and then that the Q identity was taken over by another. In other words, there were 2 Qs. There was a viable Q and then there was a LARPing Q. So support for this is evident by the change in his writing style. And as someone who's written 2 books, I could say I saw a change in the writing style. I mean, there's a reason that even computer programs can go back and to old anonymous texts and tell you whether Shakespeare wrote it or not under a pseudonym or under like a pen name. I mean, people, they have limits with their language. They have limits with their body language. They have limits with a whole lot of stuff. And they don't realize that their punctuation they're consistent in a lot of ways. They're consistent in their writing style, they're consistent with their punctuation, they're consistent with the idioms they use and the slang. And guess what? In my opinion, there was a vast difference in the way the second Q came off. This is my opinion. So anyway, the documentary talks about the backstory. And this is where you start getting into the characters, which I love a character. I just do. I mean, people are fascinating. And we get into Fred Brennan. He's the little guy who sold 8chan to Jim Watkins. And these are all people heavily featured in this. So these are names to remember. Fred Brennan, he's got, I think it's called like Glass Bones or Fragile Bones. And he's the little guy that's in a wheelchair, and he's got a little dog with him, and he's a real character. I like him. Essentially, I like him. Then you have Ron Watkins, who's the son of Jim Watkins. Oh, Lord, have mercy on my soul. Jim Watkins changes his appearance throughout this. He changes, and it's almost like if you've ever seen Rosemary's Baby, the way that a Roman Castevet is shown. He's very... There's some points with that little mustache and the way he acts, and it's very... like LaVey meets Roman Castevet meets Edgelord, I don't know. And then you got his son, Ron Watkins. Oh my God, that's Edgelord Supreme. You know, that's just my opinion. So these are some of the people behind this. And there's a huge backstory that Fred Brennan sells 8chan to Jim Watkins, the businessman, who's then moved to the Philippines, and he's got all these different fingers and all these different pies, right? He's got a pig farm, and he had porn servers before, and he's got, oh gosh, let's see, he's got an organic store, he's got a call center. You just gotta laugh. And so Fred stays on as an administrator at 8chan, but he's sold his rights to Jim Watkins, and his son, Ron, is there, and he's just something else. And then these characters, they fall out with each other, even during the documentary being filmed. So they had already started falling out, and then the fallout is like Fukushima fallout. So there's a question of how electronically Q was recognized by an anonymous board. Now think Reddit, that wasn't an issue. But then, you know, and then you had the 4chan. Okay, but Q, what he would do is he would put in a password, right? Because it's anonymous, but he'd put in a password which was scrambled into what was called a trip code. So that the administrator, this is how I understand it, the administrator was able to ascertain the real Q from all the other anonymous posters posting on a platform. Does that make sense to you? So the administrator and certain people who ran a board would be able to ascertain, you know, who was who. Since Q had moved from board to board, there was an issue of proving the Q's claims. Like what makes solid evidence of Q's high-level security connections to power, for example. One was the Mont Blanc ink pen that was allegedly Trump's, dropped by Q, and allegedly from, I think, Camp David, right? So it was just a picture of a desk, a little part of the desk, and then a pen. It's not like it had his name on it or anything. Another was an original photo of Air Force One. And I remember when I saw this one, because I remember I was thinking, well, did they pull the metadata to look and see da-da-da-da? So there was an original photo of Air Force One, and you can also take any photo that's on the internet and run it through a reverse search to see if it's ever been posted anywhere else. So it hadn't been, allegedly. There was also pre-knowledge of the arrest of the Saudi royal family. Remember all that went down? Well, apparently Q had mentioned it in a cryptic way, and it came to pass. So these are some things that proved the claim, because they always want to say, well, prove it's not just someone LARPing, right? That doesn't know anything. That's just making it up. And another thing was that Trump was then asked Q to have Trump say certain words, and then I think it was like the next speech, they said have him say tip top, and then he said not only tip top, he said tippy top. So that made you think either someone that was close to him, like say a Bannon or a Flynn or someone, said, hey, you need to say tippy top, or write that into his speech to prove that there was an insider. Or Trump is just watching this, watching the momentum and said, shit, I'll say tippy top or take top. You don't know, okay? And I think this was all from the original set of the Q, all right? This isn't the, once it starts changing hands or changing boards servers too many times. But so that's where some of the proofs, okay? And it did appear that the original Q had some unreleased information and was dropping anonymous information, essentially serving as rah-rahs. Attaboy, attagirl, that we're on the same team, we're making changes in this world, rallying the believers. And I'm sure that if you're into that and you thought it was real, I'm sure it was a good stroke. Like it was stroked you. It made you feel good. It made you feel good when things looked down. It made you hopeful. Let's be fair. Like people want to, I did read some reviews of this documentary and people are like, God, we need to talk again about how stupid, most of the Americans are. Well, how about instead of that, let's talk about how information is shared. Let's talk about when we have lied to the public and made them distrustful. Do we really need to talk about the IQs of all the Americans? Let's help people become more critical thinkers, and when they do try to become critical thinkers, let's not then lead them down the wrong path. Just a thought. I don't mean to be going off on all these tangents, but hey, I took a lot away from this documentary, and you might as well. Paul Ferber at 8chan, who was running the board, could see Q's IP address and the device locations, and they were consistent. So he could always see and recognize who Q was. You following me? So it was like, okay, that's that person or entity. And then that new Q came on the scene, all right, and I believe they used like one address. And I think the original Q had it was more savvy with the way they were putting it through. Like, I don't think they might have been bouncing it over many different IP addresses, servers. I'm not real smart with the technical bits of it, but there was something very consistent about one thing, and then it was like, it's only coming from one place and we can pretty much pinpoint it, and it was different. All right. So I believe that the second Q was a fake Q. But the YouTubers, remember we were talking about all the money and all the Q drops and people making the hats merch and like getting super chats and all that stuff. Those YouTubers and the others, they had incentive to keep the Q lore going, getting their clout, getting their channels, their subscriber count up, getting that sweet merch, getting that ad revenue, getting that monthly check, and they probably had a good time doing it. I'm not trying to say they did it under some kind of malevolent reason. It is what it is. So Paul Ferber, he sees that in his mind that it's a different Q. So he blocks Q from using the trip code on his board. All right. So Q, what does he do? What does this insider with the Q level security clearance do? He just goes to Code Monkey. He just goes over to another board on the same chan, and Code Monkey, that's Ron Watkins, vouches for this. Now, one has got to ask themselves many questions. Someone with a high-level security clearance, what the hell are they doing dicking around on the chans? Just a thought. So Code Monkey, he's the admin of 8chan at this point, and his daddy has bought him this, the daddy businessman has bought him 8chan, or bought 8chan. And so Code Monkey co-signs the second Q as being the Q, the real Q. And this Q is vouched by Code Monkey. His name's Ron Watkins. We find this out. I don't think people knew it initially. Now we know it. It's all over. We know it due to this documentary because he goes on camera. It's quite a scene, these characters. By the way, in my opinion, oh God, am I trying to act like an expert in all kinds of things? I'm not. I just have opinions. That's all. And if I do have expert knowledge in something, I'll let you know. In my opinion, Ron Watkins' body language says it all. What did he say? Thielen, body language expert. Not really, but humans, they've proven scientifically, they take in more information from body language than what you say, okay? And like with my videos, you could probably see I'm a very nervous person. I have a lot of anxiety, and me telling you this, you probably will be like, yeah, I already knew it, right? From all my previous videos. So body language, humans are taking that in. And also when you're face to face, people get gut instincts. Maybe they smell your pheromones. I mean, there are a lot of things that humans don't recognize, that they're very animalistic, you know? And going by this, Dr. Thielen does not trust the body language of Ron Watkins. In my mind, his body language says it all. I feel deception. I feel duper's delight. I feel like when he does this little dry cough right before he's fixing to tell what I think is a falsehood, his eye blink ratio, it's almost like, remember when people were taken as prisoners of war and they had their eye blink and they were doing Morse code? That's almost like, I'm like, is he doing Morse code with his eyes? I mean, his eyes are blinking like crazy on certain questions. So anyway, let's go back to the story. 8chan is not profitable. It's just not a profitable message board. So the Watkinses are not making any money off of 8chan, but it does lend them notoriety, popularity, power, which in a way can be more important than money itself, right? So Watkins Sr. is a businessman. He's an industrialist, we're told, a former porno provider, running a data center, an organic store in the Philippines. He's living in the Philippines. He's also gotten Brennan over into the Philippines. And he's got a pig farm at this point, and Jim Watkins and his son, Ron, Code Monkey, claim their interest in 8chan is just to be proponents of free speech, okay? Hey, I believe in free speech, you know? And also the questioning the dangerous ideas. Fair enough, right? Supposedly, when 8chan was sold, Watkins and Brennan were going to split profits. I think they said 60-40, but 8chan had no profits. And I do believe they say that Brennan stayed on working for Jim under other things. And Jim was also offering Brennan in-kind benefits in addition, I guess, to money, which meant like he's disabled, so he had like a full-time caregiver, I do believe, and like his place was being paid for in the Philippines. And they end up having a massive falling out, resulting in eventual lawsuits. Now that's covered maybe more than some folks would like in this documentary, but I did find that part of it fascinating as well. The documentary also talks to many of the different people that investigated Q, YouTubers and people on websites and just followers. And they mentioned to the folks that Q is posting, railing about the evils of, say, child SA in elite circles on boards that are anonymously, where users often attempt to post that exact same child essay. Like, do you not see the irony of that, the hypocrisy of that? And a lot of the folks just say, oh, you know, I don't go to those chants. I go to the places the Q drops, and they'll name certain different places. I don't go to those chants. And I got to ask you, why would a legitimate deep throat, no pun intended, use these media services, use these chants? Come on. So Watkins, Code Monkey, that's his handle on 8chan. He denies through many of these episodes of the documentary. He denies being Q, all right? And Ron says, quote, Q even attacked me. Cough. And I had to set that straight very quickly. And then, of course, the documentary, I think it's Cullen, goes on to make a comment like it really wasn't an attack. But Ron Watkins, unless he's undercover in some kind of capacity that we find out 50 years later, he's not government. He is not affiliated with the alphabet agencies. And Jim Watkins, his father, was in the Army in his youth, but he held no high-level security clearance. Okay? So you got these folks that are running this Chan at this point, allowing the platform for this Q, this second Q or original Q or whatever. They don't have any inside information, right? So the Chans and their owners, they have all these petty rivalries. And I mean petty, you know? There's nothing more petty than two different edgelords going at, or three different edgelords going after each other. They will scorch the earth against each other. And you get into that in this documentary, all right? I think it might be eye-opening to some of the people who believed in this and that really believed it was, say, like a Flynn and it was all clean and they didn't know about the Chans and all this drama. I think it might be a little upsetting to them. So I mentioned the Chans and their owners have petty rivalries that are shown. Like when one topic's banned from one outlet, commonly the refugees would flee to another open board. Sometimes another open board, sometimes another Chan. But not to go off topic here, because many times Jim Watkins claims, allegedly, that he really didn't know anything about these Chans. He didn't understand. Ron said, hey, you know, this person needs help. Let's buy this. And that Jim didn't know anything about it. But mind you, it comes to our light that Jim Watkins had already owned another Chan. He'd owned two Chan and fallen out with the owner of four Chan. So he really was not a babe in the woods, in my opinion. So that is why one of the reasons he bought 8 Chan, because he fell out with 4 Chan. So it's the battle of the edgelords here. Really, it is. You know, who's got the sharpest sword and the sharpest wit. And I see that here. And Ron Watkins even says, I don't seek infamy, but I'll embrace it. Okay, all right. And so Cullen asks him, well, what about your dad? Like, you don't seek infamy, what about your dad? And Ron Watkins just sits there and laughs and smiles and says, well, he's a character. Well, I agree with him about that. So, I mean, why are they doing this? Why did they stick their toe in this pool? You guys make up your own opinion. So regarding the second Q, or if you want to call it when the original Q moved, in my own opinion, it's the Watkinses. Fred Brennan, the little guy who falls out, he later admits that the reason that he gave as a proof that he got this blue Q sent to him and it just like appears in his apartment, he later says that that was faked by the Watkinses. I think he says Jim, but I'm not sure. But he says, like, I was told to do that, essentially, or I agreed to do that. So another Q proof is fake, okay? And so further, allegedly, Jim Watkins was a pen collector as a hobby. And we see this throughout the documentary. And Trump's alleged Mont Blanc Starwalker pen that was shown could have been one of Jim Watkins's pens, right? So, I mean, what are you left with? You're left with Tip Top? What are you left with? You're left with a picture of Air Force One that could have been taken by anybody? I don't know. So, all of them edgelords. I mean, all of them edgelords. Code Monkey, he's all posed out in these interviews like the ultimate edgelord with the statue, I guess it was like a sex doll right next to him, you know, basically signaling, hey, I'm Q, guys. When can you figure it out? And by episode 3, timestamp 506, go to episode 3, timestamp 506, Code Monkey asks Cullen, like, the people that you're questioning me about, are these like names for the possible Q? I'm paraphrasing. And then when he gets an affirmative re-answer from Cullen, like, yeah, these are the people we think could be Q, then he's like, okay, Let's continue. And he's like just so pleased with himself. He looks like the cat who ate the canary, the puss that licked the cream. His body language is like, yeah, right. They think I'm cute. Oh, good. Let's continue. So in the 2018 election, Q posts things about protecting the votes. And we all know how there was drama about the votes and fear about the voting machines and the whole thing about, hey, if he loses, we got to protect the votes. And if he wins, well, that's because there's this groundswelling, right? So Q was wading into this, right? You know, no one can argue that Q was apolitical. He was political. And Jim and Ron Watkins also, just to add more to this, they run the Goldwater website, which curated some of these same theories. A former employee of this Goldwater website, allegedly AKA Courtney Tubbs, I don't know, then later it's like, oh, that wasn't Courtney, but whatever, allegedly claimed she fell out with them from the Goldwater site, and then allegedly claimed that Roger Stone funded Goldwater. So Roger Stone was funding this Goldwater website, allegedly, that Jim and Ron Watkins were spearheading, or like, I don't know if they were like the presenters or whatever. And that Roger Stone was allegedly subsidizing this whole thing, the website. And if this is true, then 8chan, now owned at that time by Jim Watkins and being used by Ron Watkins, and the Goldwater, they have the same owner and are hosting the same information. So who's this high level insider that's hanging around Trump? No, you got these other folks here, right? Okay. So the FBI is proceeding to investigate Roger Stone, right? Remember that? And Dr. Jerome Corsi, remember that? And Alex Jones is deplatformed and sent off into the netherworld, right? And they're looking at them, I believe it was for the back channel for WikiLeaks. And it's alleged that Mike Flynn, Jerome Corsi, and Roger Stone, and so on, were feeding information through the Goldwater site to Code Monkey. In other words, through the Goldwater site to Ron Watkins, who was Code Monkey, who could then post his Q. Do you see that? That is seemingly the pattern. So when asked directly, Ron Watkins, Code Monkey, says that Red Pill, the one that fell out from the Goldwater site and then started spilling out all the tea, he said Red Pill was hired by his father, but he said that Red Pill was not Courtney Tubbs. Like that makes any difference. But he added, quote, and to try to, to counter what she was saying, like that she says this is the, I don't believe she actually said it went from this to this to this to this, but she did reveal which allegedly that Roger Stone was funding this, all right? And what Ron said to that was, it was not my job to vet that person. But he admits that his father was paying for Goldwater. You following me? So over time on this, we're seeing who the players are. We're seeing their faces. We're seeing their body language. We're seeing them admitting to buying things and their ties between the different companies. Places where this Q, or at least the second Q, is having a platform, or on which ideas that are like the second Q have a platform. So Fred Brennan, he's fallen out with the Watkinses at this point. He's going through lawsuits, and he tells of this Courtney, this Red Pill, having a big falling out with Jim. And Brennan claims that Jim would know who Roger Stone was because of the fact that he's alleging that she alleged that Roger Stone was funding the Goldwater. And basically letting the viewer know that Watkins has been playing possum this whole time about whether he knew Roger Stone. Because you see him through a lot of this 3-year documentary seemingly going back and forth about whether he knew Roger Stone. I mean, certainly if Roger Stone is helping to fund your Goldwater site, you would certainly know who he was, right? Oh, so Fred said that Code Monkey told him, quote, "We want to attract QAnon to 8chan." So that when they were trying to buy 8chan and then bought it and then put Brennan on as an admin and kept him in the Philippines with them, that Ron told him, hey, we want QAnon here. So why? You got to ask yourself why. Was that because they intended to keep it going when the original went silent? At this point in the documentary, we are shown that in December of 2017, Q's original password was leaked as Matlock. All right? Matlock. Not something super secure. Not something with 13 letters, capital letters, hashtags, numbers. Matlock. And also, that kills me dead. So, on January 5th, 2018, that was the date that allegedly the original Q could have mutated into the second Q. Then Code Monkey, as we've discussed before, had vouched for the second Q. And any writer can tell you that the writing of the original Q and the second Q would lead you to conclude that they're different people. Now, could it be a game of telephone where someone tells you something but you're not the one typing it in? Possibly. However, it almost was more message boardy. Am I incorrect? Weren't the first Q posts very succinct? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And then the second Q had more used 500 exclamation points and used lots of pictures and memes. It just was a different mindset, a different person. That's just my opinion. I think it would lead any thinking person to conclude that there are different authors there. So, if there was a change up, it happened in December of 2017 to January 2018. That's when the super secure trip code was linked to 8chan. And again, Code Monkey vouched and then said, well, I made a super secure trip code. Now we've got Q, we know who's who. It's good. Again, I got to ask, why would some insider with the Q level security clearance need 8chan? Just like Q left Reddit. Just like Q left 4chan. Or was banned from 4chan. I say left. I mean, you're left because you're banned. Why would Q be wedded then to 8chan? Why would Q go so hard with Code Monkey as to then say, okay, I've got a super secure trip code here with you at 8chan on this particular board, and now I'm going to trust you to post memes and language that's not exactly like the original. Why would someone with a top level security clearance need to do that? And I purport to you that they would not. At this time, there are also continuing other incidents of people using these chans to brag, to alert and publicize violence, live streaming violence, and trying to organize against racial groups, religious groups. Under the banner of free speech, we see that there's essentially a breeding ground for extremism, and shooters, not necessarily having anything to do with Q, but they are publishing their manifestos on these chants, right? And they're left up sometimes before they can be pulled down. And it is, again, we already in America have an issue with extreme gun violence, not just a one-on-one, but, assault rifles and the like. And so it's already in the public discourse, and then this is going on, and then these people are putting their manifesto on these chants. So the question is, if the Chans can radicalize their followers toward extremism, which it's just a platform, right? But then they can kind of get together, people who would never know each other in real life and be able to hook up, is like this is their platform. They can find each other and radicalize. You know, how is QAnon different from this? You know, and yeah, it's something you have to think about, right? But by episode 4, due to all this extremism that's going on, and it's being published on the Chans, and there's been some mass shootings, Cloudflare, who, you know, you've got to have someone that's backing up this server, I guess. Cloudflare, they pull out of supporting 8chan. They're like, done, right? And so 8chan didn't have any kind of way to be on the net. And so they pulled off supporting 8chan. So they basically dropped 8chan as a client. And I think you also know that around this time, like the House and Homeland Security, everybody's like looking into all this stuff. And I believe it was, and I could be incorrect here, but I believe that 8chan was going to testify regarding all this stuff because, you know, of the manifestos and the like. And Code Monkey, Ron, writes to Steve Bannon. Okay, you heard that right. He says he wrote to Steve Bannon regarding the issue of free speech because of these legal quagmires. Because, oh, we know Steve Bannon's big on free speech, which we do, right? We do. But why Steve Bannon? Okay, so then Code Monkey then says off screen, this is Ron Watkins, says off screen that Bannon is Q. This is what he says off screen. And I've known it from day one, actually. So this is what he says off screen on the deal. All right. But it's off the record, but we hear it. So then, after Code Monkey emails Steve Bannon, a First Amendment attorney replies back, you know, Ben Bass, reaching out to Code Monkey with an anonymous, I guess, a retainer. They didn't say the word retainer, but, you know, reaching out to Code Monkey, essentially saying, I'll support you, I'll help you. I will be your attorney, I guess. I guess there was a client relationship then formed after he reached out to Steve Bannon. And then all of a sudden, here comes the white knight attorney of Ben Bass coming in with this. We're seeing a number, and it's $14,088. He says, here, see, this is the he didn't say retainer, but here's the amount. Code Monkey then tells the viewer that that number is the white supremacist code for Heil Hitler and some kind of a saying that's known amongst the white supremacists, like we must secure the existence of our people, blah, 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 blah. How would you feel about that? How would you feel about that? When you reach out to a free speech attorney, whether or not, you know, they got you into this or that you're, you know, you have a back line to them, a back channel, but you reach out, hey, I've got a legal problem now and it's in the U.S. Can I have some help? And the attorney comes to you, and they're Jewish, mind you, and they are going to represent you, and there's this money set aside, and that money is signaling white supremacy. What do you do with that, guys? What do you do with that? Do you say, you know what? I thought I needed you, I don't need you. This thing, it's interesting. It really is. So there's always a danger in rolling all these conspiracy theories into one big overarching narrative. Like, life is never clean, it's never neat, it's never easy to have one simple answer, one simple bad guy. That's just not how life works. And could it be that Q was always Steve Bannon and that Code Monkey just simply took over posting on his behalf, and that's why he reached out for help once they got their, I always like to say tit in a sling, once they got into maybe some issues and then the money was wired over. Is that a possibility? Yes. Now, do you want to believe that Steve Bannon has a Q level security clearance? Do you believe that? Ron Watkins ends up outing himself in the finale by saying this, quote, "I spent the past 10 years every day doing this anonymously. Now I'm doing this publicly. That's the only difference." Then he goes on, 3 years of intel training was what I was doing, but never as Q. As he's explaining this whole 6-episode series, he has vigorously denied being Q, but then he slips up, admits it in a roundabout way, and laughs his arse off. And so does the filmmaker, finally realizing, oh, you just slipped up. Because this whole time, Ron Watkins is playing it off like, I'm not into all that. I'm just, into free speech, and I'm running these chants, because I'm a proponent of free speech. And did Q say that? I don't really know that. Like, like the kind of like his dad, like, I don't even know Roger Stone. Like, and then, they can't, I wouldn't say can't keep their lies straight, because, I don't know. But sometimes, if you tell the truth all the time, it's kind of easy to know when, you know what I mean? You don't slip up. You don't say in one interview one thing and then contradict it. I don't know. I did not find them to be truthful on the whole, but that's what it is. There was a big reveal, and he slips up and realizes that he said a little too much and just falls out laughing, and so does the filmmaker. And, you may wonder, in sum total, what's the harm in this little LARP? What's the harm in this little LARP, Hey, who doesn't like a great game of Dungeons and Dragons, electronic Easter egg hunts, right? But does your game end in what was known as the MOAB, the mother of all bombs? I believe, I did not follow this part, but I think that at some point the last Q was alleging that they had the mother of all bombs against, regarding Pence's treason against Trump. This at the point where people were roiling at the Capitol. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. Mike Pence could have been hurt. You know what I mean? I think he was probably minutes from being seriously injured. And this is happening right as before and as the Capitol is being stormed and invaded by an angry mob. And I think this does ask the viewer, we need to, when is it too much? When is free speech too much? Well, it's something we're going to have to talk about. And we're also going to have to talk about what we believe, and if we have issues with stuff, child trafficking, money laundering, evil people, corrupt politicians, deep state stuff. Let's talk about it. Let's have the proof, bring the proof to the table, bring it to the proper authorities, and talk about it. Let's not make it teams, because then people get dug into their trenches. They feel so attacked that they don't want to hear the truth, and they wouldn't hear the truth. They'd rather die than hear the truth. And the other side feels superior, and sometimes then won't recognize that there are some problems that need to be fixed in society. There's a lot to take away from this. I found it visually interesting. I think that Cullen Hobeck should be proud of himself. I think he did a really good job. I think that for the folks that followed Q, that were just catching this through YouTubers, that were culling the information, they might be really shocked at the people behind a lot of this, that they had no idea, all these crazy characters, that they might feel quite disappointed. It won't be the first time in life that people are disappointed. If you're watching this and you were a Q follower and people are calling you stupid and all that stuff, there was a lot that this offered people to make them interested, especially if you were caught onto it during the time of COVID when you were at home and had nothing to do but to look at the internet and to find something to be hopeful about. I get it. I really do. I think that we need to look at how information is passed in our society. I also think we need to look at the algorithms that push people against each other. You know, there's a lot of different things we could look at. And I think that getting angry at each other and thinking poorly of each other is not going to be the way we fix this. But so I think you can see that I found this documentary worth watching. I found it enlightening. I found it mind-provoking, thought-provoking. And I hope that you could drop in the comments section what you think about it. And if you have any ideas about how to help fashion the society going forward, you know, what are the limits? You know, we all know you don't scream fire in a crowded theater. How can we put limits on free speech that doesn't end up strangling us all in the end? You know what I mean? Because you've got to think about that. You know, you do. And so this is just really, I think it's worth watching. 2 thumbs up. And thank you so much for sticking with me through all this. I know I went on a bunch of tangents, but I really want to know what you guys think. Did you watch it? Do you have HBO Max? There's some great stuff. We had given up our cable entirely, and we had given up our HBO after Game of Thrones ended. And we did pick up back the HBO Max, and it's been coming through with some good shows. I've got something else to you know, bring forward. Of course, I'm always going to keep on top of the true crime, the current true crime, and also do some book reviews and classic book reviews and things of the like. So, if you enjoyed this, I would really appreciate it if you do the YouTubey things. That's the push that like button and ring the subscribe bell, and you'll be notified next time I upload. And without further ado, have an excellent day. Bye.